It is now my distinct honor to introduce our guest speaker today. Peter Gilgan is founder and chief executive officer of Mattamy Homes, Canada's largest new home builder, with over 50,000 homes built in more than 150 communities in Greater Toronto, Ottawa, Calgary, and across the United States of America. Since the company built its first home in 1978, Mattamy's master-planned communities have become renowned for their unique designs and wide variety of architectural styles. Mattamy is a recognized leader in homeowner satisfaction by the prestigious J.D. Power and Associates. One of Canada's most successful entrepreneurs, Mr. Gilgan was awarded Canada's 2007 Entrepreneur of the Year Award and Home Builder of the Year in the Greater Toronto Area 3 times in the last decade. In 2009, Mr. Gilgan was elected a Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Ontario, and in 2010 was awarded Outstanding Business Leader of the Year Award from Laurier School of Business and Economics. Mr. Gilgan's multi-million-dollar commitment to philanthropy and community building is unparalleled. From healthcare to physical activity to higher education and community legacies, he truly is a respected, dedicated community leader. From his legacy gift to establish the new YMCA in Oakville, to his significant multi-year donation to Sheridan College and the transforming of Sheridan's student capital campaign, Mr. Gilgan has been committed to building great communities through community investment and support. For the past 10 years, Peter has had a special relationship with the Oakville Hospital, first as a board member, then as a donor, and most recently as a first $10 million pace-setting gift to launch the capital campaign to build the new Oakville Hospital. He is also, as I've learned at lunch, a very accomplished cyclist and is just heading out to California to cycle from Lake Tahoe to Los Angeles. Good luck, sir. Peter Gilgan.
Well, normally when I stand in front of a microphone, I don't use notes, but today, with this being such an auspicious group, I was advised I'd better. So anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished head table, for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to me for a few minutes. Certainly thanks to the members of the Empire Club for inviting me to speak. It's a real honor. Thank you. It is great to see so many community leaders here today. What really surprises me, actually, is that I have see so many friends and business associates here, because they already know I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So I have no idea what to hear. You know, the last time I was here was a couple of months ago, and it was a really, really wonderful event. It was down at the Canadian Room down the hall, and it was a wine tasting for the whole afternoon. I recognize some of you were here with me. Come on. Anyway, it was a really fun afternoon, the part of it that I remember. And I kind of hope that what I have to say, there's a few things maybe you'll try and remember and take away. You know, I just want to talk about 3 things today, and how I think that they're the basic legs that we can use to continue our journey as a society in prosperity and health. And I think those 3 legs, one naturally, as you might imagine, knowing what I do for a living, is around shelter, providing shelter. One is around encouraging healthy living. And the third is around supporting education and its relationship to innovation. And I just wanted to touch on all 3 of those things and try and convince you that there's something we can all do about it. Just to kind of set the tone, I want to sort of transport ourselves for a minute to the year 2031, 20 years from now. And I've actually got an article here that I'm going to read to you from a newspaper article in the Toronto Star 20 years from today. And I'm reading it on my latest mobile device. It's called an iBury. There's a little amalgamation somewhere along the line, so it's, you know, iBury is just one device. And the story is very brief. It goes like this. Former Toronto Mayor Rob Ford wins in his age category the inaugural Gardner bike race. And as you know, Mr. Ford is a very big advocate of cyclists already, so which was held on the new Fred Gardner Cycleway. And this race will be held each year to celebrate the anniversary of the last car on the expressway and the transformation of that former expressway into the world's longest integrated people-powered path in an urban city. So, 2031, the population here in the GTA. Now, first of all, I want to say, you know, this is a prestigious club, not focused certainly specifically on Toronto at all. But I thought I'd talk about Toronto because when you start to mix it up and talk about Toronto and Ontario and Canada and you start throwing around a few facts and figures, it gets confusing. So I'm going to just talk about the GTA, but I hope and I believe that what I have to say applies all across our country. But I'll just talk about it in this context today. So in the GTA, our population is going to be 8 million people 20 years from now. Gas is probably going to cost about $5 a liter. But hopefully, we're not going to be that concerned about it because our gasoline consumption will be reduced by half, a combination of improvement in fuel efficiency and so forth, but also because by then we'll have a great integrated transit and transportation system which will permit us to not always take our car everywhere. Healthcare spending as a percentage of GDP will be the lowest level of any city in North America. Hospital visits due to illness are going to be down by 30%. And there's going to be more people living healthy lives past 100 than ever before. So, student enrollment was going to continue to climb. Universities and colleges in Canada will have their highest enrollment ever. And we're going to have more Nobel laureates than any other society. That's 20 years from now. That's what we can do. Now, I have a granddaughter, Holly. She's almost 4. And she might say that Papa's telling a fairy tale. I don't know. But or some of you guys might think that Gilgan was down at the bar downstairs before Harry's bar before lunch or something like that. But that's not true either. Well, it might be, but that's not what's inspiring me here. I just think it could be true. All these things could be true if we apply ourselves. It could be true because this city, and in fact this country, has all the ingredients to be a very healthy and prosperous place and going forward. It could be the most prosperous location in North America. It truly could. It's a great place. It could be true because we have some of the most brilliant minds in the whole world living here today, and we need to encourage them to stay, be as productive as possible. And it could be true because I owe it to my grandchild, or grandchildren actually, but my grandchild Holly, and to their children to do the best we can to make it so. In this city that's already great, it can be greater with the efforts of all of us. I'm going to quote from Jane Jacobs. She said, "Cities have the capacity of providing something for everybody, but only because and only when they are created by everybody." So the message is that it is all of our obligations to be involved in creating and supporting this new society, next society. So talking about this growth to 8 million people for a minute, subject obviously I know something about. Population growth, everybody knows, everybody in this room knows, equates to economic growth. Improvement in our trade surplus. I guess I just read in the paper this morning that our trade surplus in Canada doubled as compared with the last month or the last quarter. I think it was the last month. And which is a great thing. We all know that the more money we can bring into our society compared to what we're shelling out, the more money we got to spend, and the more prosperous we are and stuff like that. I'm a bit of a numbers guy, so I'm going to give you a couple of numbers. Stats Canada says that this year the GTA will hit 6.3 million, and as I said, within 20 years we'll be at 8 million. Another interesting point, when we look at our students here, you see an example of this. New immigrants to the country will account for 50% of our population in 20 years' time, up from about 45% today. When I was in Washington a few weeks ago with some business leaders, the CCCE, Canadian Council of Chief Executives. We were visiting some luminaries in Washington, including the Treasury Secretary. And what was interesting was how well they recognized in Washington and how much they believe that Canada's done a remarkable job with respect to our immigration policies and attracting the right people. And they saw it as a key fact as to why we were doing so well economically in this recent downturn, and how much they recognize that immigration is contributing to our society. So what does that mean for our communities and our societies in the future? What do we need to do differently to continue to attract and accommodate this diverse stream as our population grows? And how do we encourage the brightest and the best to choose Canada and to come here first? Well, as a home builder, I can tell you what it means to me. It means that there's going to be a need for 1 million new housing units over the next 20 years. So that's good news for me. I get to keep my job. But it's not about building the same thing we've always built. We have to continue to be innovative in the way we build our communities. Whether they're low-density, single-family townhouses, or low-rise or high-rise developments, whether they're in the city or in the countryside, uptown, downtown, wherever. We have to have respect for the diverse communities that we now have, and there is no one-size-fits-all. A small example of this would be, there are a number of folks in the Chinese community that want 2 master bedrooms in their house. Not just a big house with lots of rooms, but specifically 2 master bedrooms. And that's because many of these families want to have their parents, that 3rd generation, living with them. That's a great thing. The byproduct, health experts will tell you, is that the longer older people can stay in their homes, the better it'll be on that individual's long-term health, and also on the healthcare system at large, because it puts a lot less taxation on the healthcare system. So the challenge for us is, how do we design these communities today that'll meet the needs and, importantly, the aspirations of tomorrow's society? What do we need to do, and how do we live today so that we can do better tomorrow? We're going to need to build more up and not out as a society here in GTA. It's going to mean densifying of urban areas so that we can walk or bike or blade or board or use a transit system. I wonder if employers really have an obligation to facilitate this happening by providing accommodation at the employment end of someone's commute in a day, so that you don't, come into your office with a sweaty bike clothes on or something like that. I just wonder whether that might make sense. We have to balance these soaring buildings with parks and green space. It's a challenge, but we have to do it. We also have to continue to encourage renewal of communities, like what's going on today on Ossington Street or Queen Street East or Queen West. Interesting sidebar there is I got 2 sons that, I have several sons that live in the city, but 2 have settled into a couple of areas that are kind of cool. They think it's a really hip new places. Actually, 2 of them live around Sheldon's University, but they're still going there. But the 2 that graduated from there, one's moved out to Parkdale, and the other guy lives near the junction at High Park, and they think these are the coolest places to live. And I had to break it to them that's exactly where their grandparents both grew up, so it's kind of funny. Well, some of the homes in those areas, as you know, are really great examples of densification. They were built 100 years ago. They were originally to accommodate large families, plenty of rooms. Eventually, many of them, including the one that my grandmother grew up in or lived in, was converted into apartments because the homes were so large. And what's interesting is now many of them are being reconverted back into single-family homes, regentrifying the areas, some of them with basement apartments for rent and so forth. So, you know, it works. It wasn't designed that way, but things have transformed over the years to become what they needed to be over time. And I think we have to really be thinking about that and be flexible with all of our housing needs about that. There are things as a new home, a new community builder like myself, we can do. I want to cite for you an example, an area called Mount Pleasant Village in Brampton. I say Brampton, boy. But it's centered around a GO train station. And what we've done, it's won a lot of awards. And I think quite frankly, quite honestly and humbly, it deserves to, because it's the amount of thought and planning that went into trying to make this community really urban, really walkable, really accessible before a shovel broke any ground was quite remarkable. It's a real cooperation at different levels of government and developers and so forth, and it's working out extremely, extremely well. I really feel when I go there we've moved the needle a little bit on what could be the future. You know, you can everything is a 5-minute walk, transportation, recreation, shopping. Soon there'll be entertainment there. Parks are already there. Education is being built as we speak. There's live-work townhouses so that the residents can, who choose to, can work from home. That idea of working from home is really gaining a lot of ground. 20 years ago it was a very out there idea, but today I think it's become much more mainstream. Last week at TELUS's annual meeting, the CEO remarked that it was his goal that going forward 70% of his workforce would either be working on a mobile basis or from their home. Amazing. I mean, we wouldn't have even thought about that. And that obviously impacts, in my business, that impacts how we design houses in the future. To accommodate people being able to work. Maybe in many cases it'll be both folks working from home, and we need to think about that in a changing society. I want to talk for a minute then about health care, and this is obviously an area that I'm not trained in, but I've thought a lot about. And I've listened to a lot of real smart people talk about this, and I've seen a bit of it myself. We've got two choices, and you know the funny thing is, I hear this not only in Canada. I hear this. If I'm in the States, it's the same story. Western Europe, everybody talks the same way. Healthcare is going to bankrupt us the way we're going today. Everybody says that. Not everybody does anything more than complain about it. And I see a lot of efforts to sort of reduce the cost of health care or control the cost of health care without addressing the issue as to what's causing the problem in the first place. I think that there's a big shift has to occur. And we have to look for ways to prevent people from getting sick rather than dealing with them when they are sick. The number of incidences of preventable disease are just so significant, and many of them can be prevented around lifestyle choices. And you know, Tim was talking about me cycling and all that kind of stuff. And there's certainly an element of what, you know, and I'm not trying to wave any flags here. I've got my one of my cycling clubs sitting in the table there, all ready to rock and everything. But you know, one of the reasons I think a lot of us do that is just around the fact that we're worried about our health. We want to stay healthy. And the cost of a bike is a heck of a lot less than the cost of a hospital stay. So it's a good thing for society. Whether it's that kind of lifestyle choice or something else, there's a lot we could do around preventable disease, reducing the incidence of it, if we really kind of get going. It's an old story, but and people talk about it, but I think it really has to be integrated into our lifestyle. In this 20-year time frame, the entire boomer generation is going to be well past 65. Seniors are going to make up 25% of the population by then, which is about double what it is today. And the number of people over 100 are projected to triple. So we've got to shift the mindset and behaviors of today so that people are more physically active and healthy. We've got to integrate that into how we design our communities so that people are more encouraged to walk or bike or whatever, to play outside, get out and do something. That new Bixie bike initiative here in Toronto that came from Montreal, why did it take so long to come to Toronto? And why isn't it in Markham or Mississauga as well? Should be. I heard a great story the other day about kids walking to school, a rare concept. Of course, my brother John and I, when we were kids, we walked 10 miles to school every day. Not really, 10 minutes anyway. Uphill both, yeah, that's right. Uphill both ways in the snow in June too. But seriously, today only about a quarter of kids who live 1 to 2 kilometers from school actually walk. The rest are driven. And it's not the kids' fault. It's mom and dad are busy, right? Mom and dad are probably both working. Boom, throw them off, chuck them. Takes 10 minutes to walk, 2 minutes to drive, and then you're on your way somewhere. So some lady came up with an idea. She realizes that if your kid walks to school, they're twice as likely to achieve their minimum level of physical activity that's needed to stay healthy. Reducing the level of childhood obesity, and as many of us know, once you hit that cycle of childhood obesity, it's bad news for the rest of your life. So this mom, she decided to tackle it, and she created a walking school bus. It's a neat idea. Just like it sounds, she organized kids to walk to school, pick up kids along the way. The kids are safe because they're together, and they're having fun and getting a little exercise. Real simple, but it's a great idea. So that last little topic I want to talk about is education and innovation. So I believe sincerely that education is one of the single biggest factors in the way in improving our society. And I believe that it can contribute to the way we're going to design and build this new society in the future. And we need to encourage more great and curious minds to be thinking about things. We need to ensure that everyone has access to and is encouraged to attend colleges and universities for purposeful, or what I hear these days, mission learning. Learning that trains people for careers. My friend who's in the audience, Sheldon, he said it was okay to quote him. He says that universities have a responsibility to not just be an educator, but to also be proactive city builders for our economy in wealth creation and jobs. And to do this by attracting and securing the world's best talent in areas where we have strength and the potential to compete on a global level. I fully support that. We need to invest in our education institutions to ensure that our young people, whether they're born here or are immigrating here, have the best education possible to help create the innovations that will be required for us to be competitive in the future. That's not only investing in the bricks and mortar, which is the thing I relate to, but it's also about ensuring that we have the brightest minds teaching our students, encouraging them. We're going to have to educate our young people to create and design new communities and homes and cities of the future that will be enjoyable places to live. Not just places to live, but enjoyable places to live built on a sustainable basis. We've got to create more opportunities for these young people to get involved in health and in wellness. Prevention, not just illness, dealing with illness, but the prevention of illness, not dealing with it when it's there. And we obviously, and we see this all the time, but just I think it needs reinforcing. We've got to be at the leading edge in high value-add technology to create the technological solutions of tomorrow that will ensure that our communities are the healthiest and the most prosperous. You look at, I was reading, I subscribe to all sorts of weird magazines. One's called Aviation Week, and there was an article in there about the number of aircraft facilities that are in China today, and it's something like 86, and there's 10 being built as we speak. And if we're going to stay competitive, we've got to really, recognize that economic challenge. So my final thoughts of what I'm talking about today. Building this healthy and prosperous society in the future is no one individual or organization's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility from all of us. It's about our elected officials having the courage and the energy to be innovative and create new partnerships with business, and not always default to regulation. It's about developers investing in innovation and design and community building and looking for better ways to build and plan communities cost-effectively. It's about educators creating purposeful learning and continuing to search for new ways to teach and engage. It's about healthcare providers looking at people keeping well instead of focusing on the sick. And it's about moms and perhaps dads creating the next walking school bus. Everyone in this room today needs to think about how we can work differently to create innovative solutions to make our society more healthy and prosperous in the future. But one last point. It's another article from the Toronto Star in the same edition in 2031, and the headline reads this: Ontario Premier Hazel McCallion celebrates the first Maple Leaf Stanley Cup victory party in 64 years. The article says, at the historic Maple Leaf Gardens, current Premier McCallion, who just turned 110, participated in a celebratory skate with members of the winning Toronto Maple Leafs. Hazel, who was 46 in 67 when the Leafs last won Lord Stanley, said, "It's about time, boys." Thanks very much.
Can you hear me? Okay, we're good. Now, just before we start, I read these, I don't write them, because I've been reading what's here. I take no responsibility for the content. With the modern density increase and the desire to live near mass transit increasing the cost of housing in such areas, how do we ensure a mixed demographic, affordable, and accessible sheltering program that can provide sufficient stability to promote good health and environments to benefit from early education?
There's a lot of questions in that question, isn't it? But one of the things that I'm concerned about actually is that there's a chronic shortage of housing supply. The fellows at RealNet who track all these statistics, I was just looking at some slides that in the last day or so, and their forecast is the number of housing units that are needed, and as in the next 20 years, and comparing that against what we seem to be able to produce. And there's a real shortage. And if that shortage gets chronic, the affordable part of it goes out the window, and that's a huge concern. It's a story for another day, but I, you know, and there's kind of a part of me as a businessman that might say, oh, good, if I own a bunch of land now, my land's more valuable and all that kind of stuff. So that's more for me, but it's not really how it works eventually. Eventually, you know, if we can't house people in a way that they can aspire to, in a way that can give them satisfaction, I think we've failed as a society.
How does the current political landscape affect your business?
Okay, so there's 3 levels of government. So you've got a national. So you've got a. No, it's a fair question. And each level of government has a different influence on our business. So, you know, you could say that in the short term, the federal level has the least influence, but over the long term has a significant influence in national housing policy. But I think the question's probably trying to get at either the local government or the provincial. That's what most people really think about and relate to. And I'd say that at the local level, there's various attitudes that occur at various points in time. And I mean, politicians, their job is to get elected and stay elected, right? So they have to listen to their electorate. It's our job as an industry to try and encourage them to see ways to accommodate this growth. We're not always terribly successful at it. You know, it goes without saying that no one wants to encourage the building of a new high-rise building in an area that where they live, and everyone wants to see the fields just directly above where they live remain that way forever. I mean, that's just human nature. That's just how it is, right? But at a macro level, we all understand that it can't happen. And you know, whatever government is in power, they need to balance the interests of the local residents and the here and the now against the greater need of society to house its population.
How do we deal with the affordability for the first-time home buyer?
Keep interest rates low. You know, it's first of all, I want to say it's never been easy. It always seems impossible to buy that first house. When Brother John and I were starting out, and I remember John looking at a townhouse. It was a beautiful townhouse for $50,000, and it was like, that's never going to happen. And it did. And you know, you make that first mortgage payment, and away you go. But there's more to it than that. You know, affordability is so much affected by the supply, and if we continue to see supply constrained more than there is demand, we're going to have a problem with affordability. I'm telling you, a real problem. And the root of it is to find ways to create more supply.
Have there been any times or a specific time which you think define Mattamy Homes more than any other?
What was that question? Think to find?
Have there been any times or a specific time?
To find, okay, yeah. Absolutely. I guess that there's periods where you have some breakthroughs, and then you kind of work with those breakthroughs for a while until another challenge comes along. And I think that it's always the times when you have some kind of adversity that you're, what do they say, there's nothing like the feeling of the noose to clarify the mind. And it's certainly, when I think back on those recessions that we've been through, those are times when you really improve your business practices. But sometimes it's just being inspired by others or by things that you've seen. When we started this concept 15 years ago here in Toronto, we call it wide lot. It's a bit of an oxymoron because they're still pretty narrow, but relatively speaking. And it was kind of a way to get rid of the garage sticking out in front of the house and all that kind of stuff in suburbia that had become sort of the bane of new community development, you know, because everybody wants a two-car garage and they could only afford 40 feet, and so you have this big garage sticking out front, and we all know what it looks like. You know, sometimes it's just travel and, you know, looking at things and trying things a different way. And it's, I'll say that sometimes, you know, it's when you really have a dedicated and committed team of folks that share a common vision that you can really make a difference.
Okay, last question. I got a feeling this came from one of your cycling buddies. Peter, do you shave or wax?
Laser.
Noble Chumar, come and do the formal thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Peter, as you know, the federal Liberals are looking for a leader, so you might want to consider that. Thank you for sharing your dream. Thank you for sharing your views on how your industry can affect our society. We had lunch probably 2 months ago with Premier Peterson, the chairman of Castlesbrook, and at that lunch, you basically said this speech. You had a vision. You share your vision in every conversation that you have, and I'm so honored on behalf of the directors of the Empire Club and my partners at Castlesbrook. Thank you for speaking and sharing your dream with us today.
Thank you, Noble. Peter, as a token of our appreciation, I'd like to present you with a book called Who Said That? Memorable Notes, Quotes, and Anecdotes, selected from the Empire Club of Canada's speeches, 1903 to 2003. Finally, a couple of quick things. On the table, you'll find a list of our upcoming events. The next two are Monday, May 30, 2011. Daniel Lavoie Parr, Executive Director, Entertainment Software Association of Canada, in the ballroom down the hall here. And on Thursday, June 2nd, in this room will be John Laforette, President of Wind Concerns Ontario. I would like to thank the Royal Bank of Canada, PricewaterhouseCoopers, for being our main event sponsors for today. Thank you to Torrey's LLP for sponsoring our VIP reception. Thank you to Mattamy Homes and the Toronto Dominion Bank for sponsoring our student tables. Thanks to the National Post, who is our print media sponsors. This meeting is being broadcast live on Rogers Cable and will be rebroadcast on Rogers over the next few weeks. We are very grateful to National Post and Rogers for their ongoing support. Empire Club website is empireclub.org, and we are on Twitter and Facebook. Finally, thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. We appreciate your support and love to see you sometime soon. And this meeting is now adjourned. Have a great afternoon.